A wise man once said, excellence is a journey. I'll give you 5 seconds to guess who said that. If you guess Zhanhu, then yes, you'd be right. This was Zhanhu's intro, and the only reason it stayed in my head 5 years later is you were only allowed to skip his intro after he said it. So for 3 months, I had to hear
excellence is a journey
anytime I launched the game. Let's get this out of the way though. The proper way to announce this character is Zhanhu.
Zhanhu.
That's not it. But there is no way I'm going to be saying this for 8 to 10 minutes without getting terminal lung cancer. So if you have a problem with it, then, I don't know, kiss me on the lips and call me Sally. Zhanhu released November 7th, 2019 with the Year of the Harbinger Season 4. This was the final Harbinger to be added in the game, being the first and last Lin character ever to be added to the game. The Year of the Harbinger was not a very fun time to be playing For Honor, with all 4 heroes being either massive letdowns or blatantly overpowered. We had Blackfire being blatantly overpowered to the point where he can turn into Prime Diavolo and flip people from across the map. Then we had Hitakiri proving that it was actually possible to beat players with just one button. Yorm being the first ever dedicated stamina ability as his gimmick, but had worse stamina drain than characters like BP and Warden. And last addition was Zhanhu. The hero was probably the least finished hero in the entire game, where it made PK look like a technical character. Everything Zhanhu did was so easily shut down, it felt like you were being punished for attacking. Let's give a quick rundown on how old Zhanhu worked day 1. This character didn't have much in the means of actual moves, but they were mostly all enhanced. I say mostly because your dodge attacks were not. So if you dodge attacked someone and they just blocked it, well, you were like a deer in the headlights. Zhanhu did not have a bash. Well, he did, but not a traditional one. If you wanted to get a bash off, you need to land a superior block dodge attack. So you had no reliable opener and no offensive pressure whatsoever. So how were his unblockables? Well, Zhanhu's gimmick was that he was the only hero in the game to ever have an unblockable light attack. And before I get comments saying, oh, Mr. Stupid Dumb Fuck YouTuber, crushing counters are unblockable lights, kindly lick my balls. Any finisher Zhanhu decided to use was an unblockable, but how viable were these unblockable lights? It was pretty poo-poo stinky dogshit ass. These light attacks I believe were 600 MS, and just keep in mind, the average human reaction time is around 2 to 300. I need to kill myself, it's over. So if you actually hit someone with these lights, you should probably call for a wellness check to their house because they might have pulled a 2-mad and died at their desk, because no living breathing human was getting hit by this. Okay, so what about his unblockable heavy attack? Honestly, I think there was nothing wrong with it. So, other than the bug with his hitbox on the left side, because it didn't match his right side. But overall, it was a good move. It had soft vein properties, a wide arc, and good damage. So, good job, Ubisoft. You got 1 out of the 6 moves correct. So his other 2 moves were his dodge attack and his zone. His dodge attack is close to what we have today, being a 2-attack input dodge, having both heavy and light attack inputs, which change sides depending on what side you're doing. But the problem stemmed from this being one of the fastest dodge attacks in the game, where both light and heavy input were the same speed. The only problem is dodge attack changes were not a thing until 2023, so using the dodge attack light input was a waste of time because if your opponent parried it, you got slammed by a heavy attack. But if you only use the heavy attack input, then you only got hit by light attacks. And lastly is zone. This thing was a fucking piece of shit. It had no undodgeable property on top of being slow as hell. If you were throwing this, you were outright insulting the person you were trying to hit, unless it was after a parry. It was pretty obvious after week 1 that Zhanhu on launch felt like a pseudo-failure and people quickly switched back to their mains after about 2 weeks. Zhanhu would never get the well-deserved buffs he should have gotten 2 months after his release because of one massive reason that happened only a month after he came out. The era of COVID-19 would send Ubisoft under lockdown in December of 2019, meaning that any and all For Honor content would come to an extreme halt. The next update on February 21st, 2021 had very little buffs and nerfs to heroes like Conqueror, Lawbringer, and Hitakiri. For Honor's first ever Battle Pass would also release with this patch, and a notice that the season would be delayed all the way until June 11th, 2020. Plenty of heroes would see small changes, but none would be in Zhanhu's name. Back to waiting for Zhanhu mains. December 10th, 2020, the year of mayhem, another 6 months have passed, and yet again, Zhanhu's name was not written once in the patch notes. It has now been over a year since Zhanhu's release, and not a single change to the hero's kit. Zhanhu mains were dropping like flies, the very little of them already, due to the community feeling like Ubisoft did not care about the hero at all. This was until March 11th, 2021, with the Year of the Ascender, where For Honor would reveal the new and upcoming testing grounds that would help address heroes that were struggling like Shigoki, Aramusha, Berserker, Jangjun, Hitakiri, Gladiator, and Zhanhu. A whopping 6 heroes. To put that into perspective, the last testing rounds we had barely had a single character with feat changes. Oh, how far Ubisoft's quality dropped. Just like my last video. Quick break. I've realized asking for subs or don't asking for subs, there is a difference. I always get comments saying that they've never realized they've subbed every time I have, so if you want to support me, make sure you're subbed. Anyways, back to the video. Zhanhu's testing grounds would address every problem. Quite literally everything. To go down the list, Zhanhu would receive dodge cancel recoveries on every single attack in his kit. They also addressed his dodge attacks where now all light attacks would be heavy parry punishes instead of a mix between light and heavy parry punishes. His superior block bash would be removed and redesigned into its own forward dodge bash that chains on miss into all of his openers. Lights, heavies, dodge attacks, zones, anything. They kept his superior block but gave it a new purpose. So instead of a bash, it was now just a regular attack, but now unblockable and increased damage. And just to be safe, they've fixed the hitbox on the left side heavy finisher to keep it more in line with the right side heavy finisher. This would last for 1 week, and it would be put into the oven and baked for another season. To everyone's surprise, Zhanhu mains did not have to wait long for these changes to come to the live game. On June 10th, 2021, in Year of the Covenant Season 2, Zhanhu's testing ground changes would go live with even more changes to their kit. Every single change I mentioned would be added, but let's cover what else they included. All dodge attacks will now be normalized and brought to a normal of 333 MS recovery. This should be a normal recovery for any hero with dodge cancel recoveries for the time, well, until Pyre came out and fucked Odd One up. They would also buff his forward light speed to increase from 600 to 500 MS to prevent it from being beaten out by frame advantage. And again, just to be safe, they increased the forward movement of his light openers, while also increasing the speed of these light openers from 600 MS to 566. It's safe to say when Zhanhu main saw the testing round changes, they felt like they were at a primary stake. But when they got their stake, aka the live game changes, it felt like they got a free blowjob on top of it. Other changes like the core combat update or dodge attack changes, changing all the dodge attacks from light to light parries, Zhanhu would never really see a main buff or nerf to his kit. A cool fact is that Zhanhu is the only hero in history to get a special armor set that would be completely time gated. During the release of the Sun Wukong skin for Shaolin, they would release a game mode tied to it. This was the Halloween game mode for the time, and the main antagonist was a female Zhanhu named the White Skull Spirit, something like that, I can't remember. The For Honor devs made this Zhanhu's special character with their own armor, but players soon realized that this armor set was actually dropping in their games. The devs went, whoops, that's our bad. But the thing is, instead of being loser devs like Valve and removing things the community finds that for fun, they said, alright guys, you can keep it. But after that, it won't drop anymore. Meaning that Zhanhu is the only hero to ever have time-gated armor that has never returned since release. But other than that armor set, Zhanhu would receive nothing else. No buffs, no nerfs, nothing. Zhanhu isn't really a bad hero in terms of customization. If anything, his armor sets, especially his chest pieces, are extremely nice. But my problem with his customization comes with his executions and emotes. Just like the regular Wulin franchise, he receives no attention from the devs at all. Which is weird timing saying that as in the Tiandi Hero Fest is going on, but you know what, I'm writing the script before it. But my point is the Wulin is probably the least worked on faction in the entire game. The main point being that the Wulin have been out since 2018 and still have yet to receive faction orders. Zhanhu has some decent executions like 1 to 2, but his execution tab literally doesn't even scroll down, so it's very limited on what he has. And since we're on the topic of customization, Zhanhu's female variant just kind of looks awful. For example, the helmets on female Zhanhu look horridly modeled where people outright just avoid playing female Zhanhu. Alright, enough about his customization, let's talk gameplay. Zhanhu is a hero where his kit seems quite small, but has extreme potential. Everything has dodge cancels on it, which can combine any and all moves together. Pairing that with his superior block on dodge, this can allow you to bait out bad options, or get yourself out of a bad option. Speaking of dodge attack, Zhanhu's dodge attack against console players is literal terrorism. They're extremely fast and omnidirectional. And look, I'm not gonna lie, I sometimes struggle with them too. I don't know if it's the fact that I don't face very many Zhanhus on the daily, or I'm on the spectrum, but it's probably both. At this point, if anyone on Old Gen is still playing, Zhanhu is Satan incarnate. But that doesn't mean his dodge attacks are all good. These are some of the only dodge attacks in the game to have guard break vulnerability, where if you get guard broken during the startup of the dodge attack animation, well, fuck you. His heavy unblockable is insane though. This move is probably one of the best unblockables in the game for 3 reasons. Externals, damage, soft feint. External attacks in today's game are a must in 4s, especially unblockable when seeing as we keep nerfing externals every patch and we keep adding heroes with full blocks and unblockables like externals, and an unblockable external like Zhanhu's is just a masterpiece. This attack already does 28 damage, so it's nothing to scoff at, and pairing that with its insane soft feint mechanic, it makes it all the more the threat in combat. If you get it wrong, you cannot afford to get it wrong again. Zhanhu in terms of kit is a solid hero, and I was going to say how he's not the best hero at the moment, but that's not the fault of Zhanhu. It's more the fault of the overtuned heroes that overpower him and everyone else. So honestly, Zhanhu is one of the only heroes in the game I would say Ubisoft did right, with their rework keeping the integrity and the identity of the hero. Speaking of identity, let's talk about feats. Zhanhu is basically For Honor's Pyromancer, and that's because of his feats. Fiery Tusks, Kill and Ruse, Fiery Breath, and Scorching Deluge. Zhanhu is, as I recall, the only hero with feats that fully synergize with other feats. For example, Fiery Tusk and Quill and Ruse. Fiery Tusk on its own deals 10 damage, physical, but can cause an explosion if the target is on fire. Kill and Rose is a trap that explodes and burns targets for 30 fire damage. This can be used to place a trap or just throw at people, like I throw compliments at your father. For a trap feat, this brings insane offensive pressure and an amazing, and I would say one of the best second tier feats in the game. If I get hit by these two feats combined, with the third feat active, I'm reaching for my Alt F4 button. His fourth feat is alright. I mean, it's got its counters. You can't use it indoors, and normally it's pretty obvious when a Zhanhu is going to use it. I wouldn't change any of these feats, but I would say he should have a new feat added to him in a hero like Pirate. In the third feat slot, that would be exactly like Sharpened Blade, but with fire damage instead, giving him more potential with his other feats and adding some uniqueness to him. Use some sort of animation where he's wetting the blade and then scratching the ground to ignite the blade, but this needs to stay in the third feat slot or even the fourth feat slot, because making this a feat that can synergize with his third feat, like 40% damage increase to all attacks, is not a good idea. Zhanhu is a solid hero and I would change almost nothing with him. I only hope that in the future, him and the Wulin get the love and support that they should have gotten years ago. As always, I love you guys, and I hope you have a great day.
I'm behind you. What?